What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA show. And today I was planning to make a completely different type of video. Actually, had a few different topics in mind, and this story popped up. Now, this, of course, had to be the story once this came out, simply because we're talking about arguably the biggest, or at least one of the biggest UFC stars ever, one of the most popular fighters ever. And it's a bit heartbreaking because for us as MMA fans and people who've been watching the sport for a long time, Khabib is pretty much universally loved. He is a good guy through and through. He was a tremendous fighter, walked away with an undefeated record. But I think the thing that draws fans to him most is his character. And you'll even see in this clip when he's faced with and I'm going to be trying to be as objective as possible here, because I definitely, some of my judgment is being clouded probably just because I'm such a big Khabib fan, but he is faced with, I would say, it seems to me, some pretty rude behavior from the flight attendant. But again, I'm going to explain why we need to give them the benefit of the doubt as well. Just given these typical situations on airlines, they don't maybe know who he is. Not that that excuses anything, but like I said, I'll try and be as objective as possible, despite the fact that I'm pretty aggravated by this entire incident, as it feels a little racially motivated, or at least perhaps people are calling it racial profiling. Of course, I think they're getting to the point that it's not, again, really having to do with his race, but really more his religion. Maybe that sparked some fear. And again, these are just theories. These are just what people are saying, ideas that people are espousing, but is that really what happened? I guess we'll have to wait to hear for an official statement from the airline. I believe it's Alaska Airlines. But let's watch this clip first, and then I'm going to do my best to give as unbiased of a reaction and response as possible. So let's check this out. Apparently, this happened, I think, today, which is crazy. And just to cue it up, it says the location is Las Vegas, Nevada. So I believe he's flying from Las Vegas into LA for UFC 311, which happens this weekend in Los Angeles. So let's check this out.
I know the language. I know
It's not about the
I
language.
know how to help you. And now you guys, because this woman don't understand what she's talking about.
When it says inaudible there, by the way, I've tried to play that back a bunch of times, and I think he said something like, "This lady tells me nothing." We'll watch it a second time just so you can hear the whole conversation. And by the way, the last piece of context, he's in the exit row. So you know how they usually come by and say, "Hey, are you willing to help in the case of an evacuation, in the case of an emergency?" And everybody has to verbally say yes. So it seems like there was maybe he didn't hear something correctly and didn't give the response that the flight attendant wanted. Maybe she felt as though either he didn't understand what she was saying, or perhaps that he was refusing to answer that question in the affirmative, and that's why she felt uncomfortable or wanted him to move. It does seem bizarre, though, because here he's saying clearly that he does understand. He understands the language. He knows what's asked of him. He said, "When I came on the plane, they asked me the same questions, and I said yes." So it seems like he's clarifying, but now the other flight attendant is all of a sudden uncomfortable about him sitting there. So let's listen a little bit more. So again, he said right here in white, trying to understand what she was talking about.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're either going to have you switch your seat because my flight attendants are not allowing you to sit in the exit row, or you're going to have to get off this plane and then we'll have to leave because they're not comfortable with sitting in the emergency exit row. My flight attendants. And unfortunately, it is fair.
It's not fair.
Yes, it is.
But you guys, when I was making check-in, they asked me, do I know English? Yes, I said.
And they said yes. And I understand that, but it's also off of their judgment. I'm not going to do this back and forth. I will call a supervisor. You can either take a different seat, or we can go ahead and escort you off the plane. Which one are we doing? Okay, I'll call a supervisor, and then we're going to have to rebook you for a different flight. Josh, do you copy?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to watch it one more time, but there's a few things we need to break down. Now, again, as a massive fan of Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's arguably, until the rise of Khamzat Chimaev, he was my favorite fighter, but he still is, I mean, what can I say? Number one, number two, but I'm a massive fan of Khabib. He's incredible for everything he's done. I love the way he stands by his principles, by his fighters, how he wants them to be bigger and better than he ever was, which is a tall task and maybe even an impossible task. He's hilarious. He may have even eclipsed Conor McGregor as a star in a lot of people's books. I don't know, but I am a massive fan of Khabib Nurmagomedov, and so I'm going to try and not be too biased here, because it is infuriating as a fan to watch this, because we know what a gentle, nice, kind human being he is, and to see him get treated like this is obviously upsetting. But let's break it down. It appeared what they gave him the option to either change seats or get off or remove himself from the plane. They said you can change your seats or you can get off of the plane, essentially. So they gave him those two options. So in the airline's defense, just trying to be objective here, he had the option to switch seats, but he chose not to. Now, let's look at it from his perspective. He probably felt as though he was being wronged. And Khabib, as we all know, is a man of principle. So he's not going to, if he feels like he's being discriminated against, which may very well be the case here, it may not be, I don't know yet, we don't know the full context, but if he feels like he was being unfairly profiled and discriminated against, of course, Khabib is not going to change a seat. He would never do that. And so I totally get his perspective as well. Now, going back to this flight attendant, in her defense, we have to be objective here. She's not the one that is asking him to move. It sounds like there was another flight attendant that is now saying she was not comfortable with him sitting there, told this flight attendant that. And again, kind of like if we have in any corporation or in the police or whatnot, there is a part where the employees have to support each other to some extent, right? I mean, obviously you have to stand up for what's right, and I get that. But from her vantage point at this point, she doesn't know Khabib. And probably the corporate policy is she has to listen to the concerns of other flight attendants and support them and follow through with those orders. So she gave him the ultimatum to either move or get off the plane, probably per Alaska Airlines procedure. Now, the part that I guess we want to know, so even if the airline was in the wrong, I don't know if we can necessarily blame this particular flight attendant, although I'm sure she's going to get a ton of crap on social media. The question is really, what is the threshold that constitutes or that is necessary, that needs to be met for the other flight attendant to say, I'm no longer comfortable and he needs to move? That's the question that we have to ask here. What's the policy? What's the threshold? Maybe there is no threshold. Maybe because flying has become such a sensitive subject that if a flight attendant has any reason to ask a passenger to move, they must adhere. I don't know. So that's the question that we have to ask. And was that threshold met? Was there a good enough reason that the flight attendant was within the guidelines of the company and the procedures to ask him to move? Now, again, we feel upset as fans because we know Khabib, and we know that obviously if she perceived a threat, that's insane. If there's any other thing that she might have perceived, maybe some rudeness or something from him, I am sure that he probably didn't mean anything because we know his character. Unfortunately, it sounds like she did not know who he was and did not know his character and had this adverse reaction. Let's watch it one more time just so you can see in full context. I won't pause it this time. So again, he is starting off protesting it language that the words that he's saying is in white. The flight attendants is in yellow. And he's starting off by saying, hey, I know the language. So it sounds like this began as perhaps a dispute over the fact that maybe she felt he wasn't understanding what she was saying in the questions of, are you willing to assist passengers in the case of an emergency? So let's watch it one more time all the way through.
It's not about the language.
I know how to help you. And now you guys, because this woman don't understand what she's talking about.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're either going to have you switch your seat because my flight attendants are not allowing you to sit in the exit row, or you're going to have to get off this plane in the block because they're not comfortable with sitting in the emergency exit row. My flight attendants. And unfortunately, it is fair.
It's not fair.
Yes, it is.
You guys, when I was making check-in, they asked me, do I know English? Yes, I said.
And they said yes. And I understand that, but it's also off of their judgment. I'm not going to do this back and forth. I will call a supervisor. You can either take a different seat, or we can go ahead and escort you off the plane. Which one are we doing? Okay, I'll call a supervisor, and then we're going to have to rebook you for a different flight. Josh, do you copy?
Correct.
All right, we're going to pause it there. So coming back to my assessment, man, again, it's infuriating because I just find it so hard to believe that he did anything to warrant getting kicked off of this flight or being asked to move or being some concern for a threat. But that's, again, I know Khabib. We all know Khabib. He is beloved in the community of mixed martial arts and beyond. He's globally famous, one of the most famous, actually, probably behind Conor, the most famous mixed martial artists on the planet. Now having this tremendous run as a coach and a mentor and all these other things. So, of course, it's aggravating. And I find it really, really hard to believe that he did anything to warrant this type of treatment from Alaska Airlines. But I think more information needs to come out. Again, I can understand that this other woman that was on camera was perhaps just trying to do her job, trying to follow protocols. What's really the key question is what happened in that interaction between Khabib and the initial flight attendant. Hopefully more information will come out in the next couple of days, maybe from his teammates, maybe from witnesses surrounding that whole incident. I have a feeling the person who recorded that probably knew who Khabib was, but I'm sure didn't want to get involved or didn't say anything for whatever reason. Maybe he did say something before he began filming and they weren't listening and then he pulled out his camera. I don't know. So there's a lot of questions unanswered that hopefully we'll get more clarification on tomorrow. But yeah, it's just so unfortunate. And UFC 311, like I said, he's probably flying to LA to corner his guys, Umar and Islam. So this is just a whole mess. Knowing how strong mentally Khabib is, I'm sure this is not going to faze him whatsoever. I imagine us fans are going to make a much bigger deal out of this than Khabib will. We're probably more upset than he is. He probably made the decision that he didn't want to bend the knee and didn't want to change seats. So he chose as a man of principle to get off the plane and just be rebooked to the next flight. That's probably what happened. I guarantee you the airline is, well, I would hope, I'm imagining the airline is going to vehemently apologize to him because it seemed like he has done absolutely nothing wrong. And again, knowing his character, I doubt he did anything wrong. There was maybe some miscommunication, giving that other flight attendant the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was miscommunication, but in the worst case, it was just straight up racial profiling, which obviously I take personally, given my background, if that was the case. Let's see what happens. Let me know what you guys think after watching this footage. What do you think happened? Do you think it was just a communication issue? Something having to do with maybe misunderstanding his accent? Was the other flight attendant just straight up racist? I mean, we're speculating completely at this point, but tell me what you think in the comments. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I suppose we will dig deeper tomorrow. I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.